So welcome, our beloved, brilliant colleague, Fiona. We so appreciate your consistent visionary leadership. And as always at Setsi, we begin all things by acknowledging our creator, by acknowledging the original stewards of the various lands we're on. We acknowledge all our ancestors, all those who toil without compassion or compensation. We acknowledge all our elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, and learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. So Fiona, can you please introduce yourself to our listeners and viewers and share a bit about your remarkable work?
Victor, thank you. Tanse Gidawal. Hello, how are you, everybody? Fiona Nitasipikason Akwamina Kanipowit no Siwawaskasu. That means my name is Fiona and my Cree spirit name is Standing Elk Woman. I am originally from a very small community in the northern Saskatchewan called Stanley Mission, which is part of Lac-La-Ronge First Nation. I'm a member of Lac-La-Ronge First Nation on Treaty 6 territory. Now I live in Sagastandok out in the east in Kjipuktuk, which is a Mi'kmaq word for the Great Harbor, otherwise known as Halifax, Nova Scotia. I have been out here now 24 and a half years. I've lived in 4 provinces, 1 territory in Canada and also in Scotland. So I kind of been around this world for a while. I have a beautiful daughter, and I'm married to a research scientist, and we have a wonderful life here in Halifax. I feel I've been beautifully embraced by the Mi'kmaq people on whose land I reside, I work, I live, I play here, and the traditional unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq, I might add. I think that's kind of it in a nutshell.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for all that context and for your consistent leadership and just authenticity. I so appreciate you and all that you do for so many. So my first question, what inspires you about your work right now? What has you curious?
Oh, it's all about everything I do. I try to do that with intention, especially now that as I get older, I realize, you're not here forever. So you really want to make use of your time. And my main goal in life is just to be of use. So what inspires me is I look for opportunities every day where I can contribute. And I hope that future generations will benefit, if it's even in a small way. I've never thought of myself as some great, influencer or change maker or anything like that, but I'm a human being with a voice, with passion to help, especially youth and Indigenous youth in particular. But, I've grown up around many Indigenous peoples. I've lived in fly-in communities, I've lived in remote communities, my own home community, and I've seen many of the wonderful aspects, and I've also seen many of the challenges that our peoples have faced directly as a result of a colonization, and most specifically, residential schools. I attended 2 day schools myself, and my mom's a day school survivor, and my grandmother, 11-year residential school survivor. I've seen the impacts of climate change, so I get very involved with advocating for climate action as well, and using Indigenous knowledge to lead the way for that as well. So I think anywhere I see a need or a way that I could fit in and support and use my skills and whatever talents I have, I think that's our job in life, to be honest, is whatever you have to give, I think you should, if you can. And most of the time it's not money, it's our experience, our passion, our desire to help others. And that's where the richness in life lies. So brought me to where I work. I work at a large professional services organization. And my original job was to be the lead marketer for the Atlantic region. That's my background, marketing communications. It had really nothing to do with me being an Indigenous woman, a First Nations woman, but it didn't take very long for me to realize that I was working in an environment at the time. While it was wonderful, I couldn't find any other Indigenous people that worked at the organization that I work at. And this is 8 years ago, sorry, now. And it was after the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada released its 94 calls to action. And one of those calls to action was number 92, which essentially asks corporate Canada to step up, hire more Indigenous peoples, purchase from Indigenous businesses, educate yourselves on the shared history of Indigenous peoples and non-Indigenous peoples on this land, we now call Canada, and much more. And I thought, what could we do? So I started advocating for and sharing with my colleagues about the Indian Act and residential schools, and just sort of bringing these things to light, because no one was talking about that back in 2017. And so I started hosting things like bannock and tea, lunch and learn sessions in the boardroom. I bake bannock all night, bring it in and talk about my family, my grandmother, and residential schools, and people really took an interest. And it didn't take long for things to kind of catch fire, and people really rallied about, okay, what more can we do? Eventually, we formed a national, in our organization, a national team of Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples to kind of grapple with, okay, what do we do? How do we build structure something? And it resulted in the first reconciliation action plan of its kind in corporate Canada. That's almost 4 years ago. And we are in the next phase of creating a refreshed action plan, because we've managed to, hit most of the marks that we set out to accomplish back in those days. And so just seeing that momentum has been, what encourages me. And what I'm curious about is, what more can we do? Because there's always something more we can do to make the world a better place. I know that sounds cheesy, but, we live in tough times. We live in very difficult times all around the world. And I think rather than be, in despair, I think the best thing we can all do is focus on what can we each do to take action to make things a little bit better where we are. And everybody can do something. And for me, that gets me up in the morning, that keeps me curious, that keeps me excited, because it's so important. I think more and more of us have to think about, don't wallow in despair. Push that aside. Don't hold on to it. Let it. An elder told me recently, something is hurting or bothering you. Notice it. Don't hold it in your hand for too long. Let it go. Focus on what is you want. Speak the words of what you want. Speak the words of what you want. Those words lead to your actions. Those words lead to change. Okay, I've gone on and on, but that's kind of, you asked me the question about what makes me curious. I guess almost everything that captures my interest at the moment. I have a little bit of that squirrel syndrome, but that's what keeps me excited and interested in life in general, and wanting to do more and more with the time that I have left on this planet.
That's absolutely beautiful. And you definitely did not go on and on. You shared so much wisdom and actionable insights. I just appreciate you. And once again, your candor and your leadership, as always. So my next question, what challenges and barriers do you face in your work? And what are some of the approaches you take to overcome some of these challenges?
Well, without becoming too specific, I will say haven't been that many, in the sense that most of the ideas that I and my colleagues put forward are embraced. At the very least, there's a curiosity about, why do we want to enact certain change? Like recently, we brought in most organizations. I'll just use this as an example. Most organizations have 3 days bereavement leave. It's just kind of a standard thing, which you think about as kind of, to most Indigenous peoples, if we go to our home communities, if somebody has passed, it can take a number of days, the whole process that we go through. And in our tradition, we need 4 days. We have sacred fire. We have, there are duties you have. I'm the oldest of my cousins, and there's certain, roles and responsibilities that we have in our communities. Each of us has a role. And so it can take a lot more than 3 days. And if I have to go back home from where I live, it's a day and a half to get there. Anyway, it's a long way of saying, not only do we have a different bereavement policy now, which is 10 days, you don't have to take it all at once. It's for anybody at the firm. And it's not just for immediate family, however the organization would define that. It is who you decide is your family, because that is how we operate. So we've been able to influence, as Indigenous peoples, the rest of, how the firm, the organization treats everybody. So I think that's been, a great experience. So it wasn't a challenge, but we had to re-educate. And I guess maybe to get to that point, it is about educating people. And that can take some effort. We're on another journey as well. I will not get specific about it right now, but it is challenge to educate, but when you are met with a willingness to learn, then the challenge is greatly reduced. And when you work in an inclusive environment where the inclusion is a value of the organization, then you do feel heard and you feel seen. It's not been all, roses. I mean, in the beginning, there were very few of us at the organization who were Indigenous, who were advancing this kind of work. But now we have grown our ranks and the work is becoming lighter. So it doesn't feel like you're pushing a boulder uphill. And I don't mean that to sound like it was like, I'm not slamming anybody, but it was basically one other colleague and I who were really working hard to advance all this, and it was exhausting, but we were so passionate and we knew that we were working, we were going towards something important, and that really just energized us on a daily basis. And yeah, so as far as challenges, I mean, there can be, and not necessarily within my organization, certainly things like microaggressions. I mean, those exist. And it's really just a lack of understanding. So I really try, how do I deal with it? I really try to find that compassion. I try to not be defensive or on the offensive. I will, listen to somebody, and usually when we have a conversation, they come to understand that they just didn't understand. And so they become more aware without having me push it in their face. They become more aware that maybe they need to educate themselves and mind their words a little bit. I'll use a quick example. I've been asked, well, so you must really be doing well because you don't pay tax. I'm like, I don't pay taxes? What do you mean? Well, I mean, Native people don't pay taxes in this country. Well, okay, so there's a really, really, that's a good opportunity to educate. By the way, I do. I pay all the tax. Or you get your education paid for. That is not true. It can be true in cases, but it's actually not as prevalent as one might think. So I find sometimes it is a little tiring having to debunk myths all day long, but I really do see it as an opportunity, and it's one person at a time. You educate one person, and you help someone understand, that has a ripple effect on their community, on the other people that they interact with. So I just, maybe it's the patience that I inherited from my mother, my beautiful Woodland Cree mother, who is the most patient person on the planet. She's got all the time in the world for anybody. And I think if somebody wants to sit down in conversation with me, then I will have all the patience in the world for them. And I thought hopefully that will result in a good outcome.
That's beautiful and full of grace, mercy, empathy, and compassion, because that would be very frustrating to me, those type of, even though I deal with microaggressions as well, those are like that.
Yeah.
That's just not just astounding because I've heard this before, but yeah, that's just.
Well, I mean, I'm not perfect. I certainly have my moments where I've become irritated.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to be real, but I really do try to go, or I'll ask a question. Usually if somebody says something and I go, I can hear the microaggression in that statement, I'll say, I'm curious why you asked me that, or I'm curious why you said that. Would you tell me more? And that usually opens up a conversation rather than me going, oh, you just said to me, like, that doesn't really get anything, that doesn't move anything forward, right? So I do try, if someone is just being a jerk, well, I usually do my best to end the conversation as soon as possible. I'll go and smudge and then move on with the rest of my day.
Ashay. Yeah, just pull out the sage
Oh,
and move on.
yeah. Oh yeah, I gotta cleanse everything, but and just get rid of that bad spirit, But I believe most people are good. I believe most people mean well. They just need to understand, and that's all. I really do. It's very easy in this world of, everything's immediate. We see everything in the news so fast. Everything happens like in front of us on our phones as it happens. But we're really seeing the bigger picture. We're seeing the things that get the clicks and the likes and the retweets and the reposts and shares. And that's usually the negative stuff. I think, what you focus on grows. What you think about, you bring about, and you have, when you look for opportunities and good things, you will see opportunities and things. And I guess that's a survival skill. You know, I've had a lot of things happen to me in my life, and that's a whole other podcast. I'm sure all of us come with trauma. All of us come with challenging things in life, but I'm grateful to have the survival skill of, you know, what is it I want to see as an outcome? Focusing on what do I want rather than what I don't want. And that is a teaching. It's probably a very universal teaching, but it is a teaching in my culture about speaking. I talked about it before, speaking the words of what you want. You invoke the spirit. Everything has a spirit. You invoke the spirit that you want into, and then that becomes, you know, what happens. So yeah, that's where I'm at these days.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Thank you so much for the remarkable words of wisdom and guidance and clear empathy for humanity. The fact that we sometimes are into this space where we have to be resilient, but that resilience turns into a beautiful moment to teach others about culture and about grace and mercy. So once again, I just appreciate all that you do for so many. I've learned so much in this conversation, and I think you're a prime example of the change that we want to see in this world of complete polarization on so many issues. So my next question, what is your ultimate goal, and what does success look like to you and your colleagues?
Well, I think if I can speak on behalf of my colleagues first, you know, ultimate goal is decolonization of our workplace, but more broadly to bring corporate Canada on the journey of reconciliation, because, you know, we're not going to wait for governments to do it, and that doesn't make sense. It's going to take all of us, not only in corporate Canada, and I say corporate Canada broadly. Most of us work for, those of us who live in Canada, or what we now know as Canada, are working for some sort of company. Each organization does have an opportunity to make change, but it's really the individuals, you know, and I call upon Canadians to educate themselves. There's lots of resources out there. Join us on this journey, because when Indigenous peoples have the same opportunity to thrive as everyone else in this country, then Canada will be stronger. Canada will be better. Canada will be prosperous. And so that's, you know, my hope, and that we help nations, Indigenous nations, whether they be First Nations, Métis, or Inuit, helping them build and grow into self-sustaining, self-governing nations that they are, but strengthening them from an economic empowerment standpoint, walking alongside them. So that's what many of my colleagues are doing now. And but bigger vision. I live in I guess, you know, I have rose-colored glasses on, you know, I live in a bubble. Sometimes people say I live in this bubble of optimism. I believe in doing that because I think truly optimism is the only way anything happens, anything good happens in this world. And so I am optimistic that in the generations to come, starting with us now, we will be in a far different and far better place. But we have to encourage the good people of the world to stand up and do something positive to move things forward. And don't believe for one second that you don't have power. Every voice has power. You do not know where that where those great words are going to come from. Listen to the children, listen to the elders, listen to each other. And so I guess I know that we are ready for a better world. We're just going through a rough patch right now.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Thank you so much for all that you do for so many, Fiona. It's been an absolute pleasure connecting and building with you. And I know that we're going to not just cross paths, but continue to build. And as always at Setsi, we close the way we began this conversation by acknowledging our creator, by acknowledging the original stewards of the various lands and waters that we're on. We acknowledge all our ancestors, all those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We acknowledge all our elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, and learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. Thank you so much. I so appreciate you.
Hi. That was an absolutely wonderful time speaking with you, Victor. Thank you for doing the work that you do. I'm proud to be part of your community.
Okay.